kick off with a few questions. And look, the first question, which has probably been, it's a bit of a hot topic at the moment, certainly talked about it doing the rounds earlier this evening, is that, there is sort of an increase in costs that we've seen creep in of late due to global factors. Labour's tight, certainly here in WA, fuel, supply and so forth is a factor. If we see discretionary spending slip down, which we are seeing some stats, and it's a tough environment, from your respective positions, what's actually sort of happening on the ground in WA hospitality? So, Graeme, if you obviously, as from an operational point of view, you're across a venue. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Graeme, I'm the Managing Director of Social Grounds. Social Grounds is a management company, so we run the Rottnest Lodge and golf course on behalf of 3 families. We also have a few venues ourselves, so in East Freo we've got the Jetty Bar, and then down south we've got South Camp, and then we also run a consultancy business. So through all of that work that we're doing at the moment, and all writing budgets for next year, we're certainly seeing costs going up, and I suppose consumer confidence coming down, and not all those costs we can pass on. So the reality, I think, going into next year is that there's not a lot of budgets with a lot of growth in them. It's kind of probably a bit more pessimistic, unfortunately, going into the new year. So we're all kind of managing costs as best we can and fighting for that unique experience that brings people in.
Thank you. I'm going to pass to Steve. The same question, mate. How's operations for you?
Good day all. My name's Steve. Got a couple of sort of brew pubs here. So got Found in Subiaco and Found Lab down in Byford. Both businesses, I think, so Byford's 3 years old this weekend. So we kind of opened up at what is, I guess, considered pretty hard times. And that goes for both businesses. I think I think you really do have to be on top of every single little number that is, absolutely possible to be seen. If you don't have a real clean back of house, a really good understanding of your numbers, you could almost use last weekend as a real life example around a public holiday. You bring in a public holiday and, really one person not having a break at the right time can influence a day between being, a profitable break even or, in the red. So to be really on top of those numbers is super important. I think probably the other half of this question is, I think those that are doing things well, and the people that do look at the 1%ers that do understand their business, I think it's not all doom and gloom out there. There's a lot of us that are probably having pretty good times as well, but it really is probably there's more work to get there, and the what's left at the end of the day probably isn't what it once was.
Thanks. So, Michael, I guess, good segue, as the designer of one of the venues and sort of pretty heavily in the hospo space. What are you seeing in terms of project pipeline? Things stalling or things still sort of rolling through?
Hi, Michael. Michael from Benson Bailey Studio. We specialise really in hospitality space, working with a number of people here as well. Worked with Graeme and Steve on various projects over the years. From a delivery perspective, obviously, we're aware that there are cost increase, but that's nothing new. We live in Perth and Western Australia, and we're pretty used to the rapid increases in pricing. I'm being told at the moment through builders that there is tension in the market as well. So that since COVID, this is the first time that they're getting phone calls from trades looking for work. So I think that's a positive sign. Given current world events, we believe it'll just stabilise and the panic will come out of the market from that end. In terms of a hospitality design aspect as well, that using technology, designing spaces really well, considering layouts. If a bartender takes 5 steps instead of if we can design it so they take one step, does that mean you can lose a bartender? Kitchen layouts and designs as well, working with the right consultants for those, maximising your efficiency, and then using various technology, which you were just alluding to, around POS and integrating those together, your staff management, your social media, all of those things. So really leaning into that as well to know the numbers we're finding really critical. But from a design perspective, it's about efficiency. So back of house as well, all of those things, but then not letting those affect your main drive, which is why people come into the space. So spending good money there and then being ultra creative, not necessarily spending fortune on the front of house, but making them super creative and interesting and dynamic for patrons, because they're looking for experience. They're not looking to just go out and get drunk anymore, or they're looking for great food, but what's the other thing that you're offering them?
Excellent, thanks, mate. I'll pass it to Rob. Well, we've got one more on this question. From your side, I guess, how do you see it? You're still getting deals done. How's things with the recent changes?
I'm Rob O'Brien, Silverleaf Investments. So we based in Fremantle. We operate out of WA mainly focused. We focus also a fair bit in Tasmania and a little bit in South Australia, and just recently went to the Northern Territory, which is slightly off brand, but anyway, Darwin's interesting. What we're finding is, so we touch in both retail is mainly our business. We've got a bit of industrial, office, hotel, accommodation, and so we do touch in the hospitality space. We are finding that there's demand. It is really tough to get the deals just because of the amount of capital we need to put in. There was no doubt probably quite a few years ago, especially when post-COVID, demand was massive, interest rates were cheap, there was a lot of incentives in the market. They are now flowing back out on a landlord side because we just can't afford it, but it hasn't gotten cheaper. So we are still finding there's demand. Like in our game, honestly, we don't have to be that talented. Population growth papers over all of our problems. The more people we put in, as long as we're in those economies, they come in. And also the built space that we've found, particularly in retail, hasn't kept up with the population. So our sales density per square metre has gotten a lot better. Our GOCs, or gross occupancy costs, are getting better. But I'm not sure whether the retailers or hospitality operators, whilst the turnover's up, are actually keeping hold of that margin. And that's probably our challenge. Like really, being a lessor, we're a little bit like the tax system. We know that we can only charge our tenants so much of the percentage of the turnover, and they get to a point where they physically can't pay it. So we need to keep working with best in class. We need to make sure that that tenant we've got or partner is operationally efficient themselves, because that's the only ability for them to continue to pay us as we go forward.
Thanks very much. It's probably a good segue into some of the design side of things. And Michael, you started to touch on it, but with budgets sort of under pressure, we certainly find as a builder that the design's often where we start to sort of get that tension, trying to get a deal to stack up. How do you balance creating something sort of distinctive and having a unique proposition with the reality of the cost and so forth? Is there any secret sauce?
Don't scrimp on your back of house and your functionality of the space. I think that's critically important. I see Graeme nodding there, because staff costs are your single biggest cost in hospitality. So the operation is incredibly important. Creativity in your front of house, in your customer experience. And then we're finding our clients who are doing the best are the ones who are constantly evolving and delivering different experiences across their spaces, whether that's trivia nights, music, kids events, Bluey coming into town. We've just delivered one where they've got animals on the site, multiple experiences throughout the day, trying to really drive or bring people into your space as many hours as you can. And I think Steve was saying, probably doesn't mind me saying this, but they just had their at Found Brewing, they just had their biggest week ever just a week ago. So and that you're constantly driving experience in your spaces as well, and I think that's the key. But then you don't have to spend. We're trying to work with our clients and be creative and experiential in their spaces, and trying to drive down that price point as well. So, just creative use of materials and design layouts and furniture now. We're starting to source direct furniture as well, rather than using local people as well. So, which is I think that's the big players in the market are starting to do that as well. But creativity, I think, is the best way to deal with that cost.
Graeme, from a design, but at the same time, I guess operationally, you mentioned staffing and costs. It's tighter to run. How do you balance sort of still creating that experience and keeping costs at a profitable level? To Steve's earlier point.
I think naturally we look at technology. I think pre-COVID, I was never really a big fan, to be honest, of the QR code world, but I think the reality is that COVID changed a few things and it's here to stay. You can do that in a way that's a combination of service still. So personally, I prefer the face-to-face experience that hospitality brings, and naturally we're social people, so we want to actually go out and enjoy an experience. So to be able to deliver that in various ways, I think is a really good way to do it. We've been lucky enough to work with designers that help us design a space that works really well. So that, I think, going back is really good. Having really good people, of course, so being a people-led industry, it's fundamental to the day-to-day in terms of customer experience, but also that they care about what they're doing. So actually helping each other out is always really good. That also means a good level of training, I think, for people really helps. And you can only charge so much, unfortunately. So the reality is you've got to focus on being really competitive in a very competitive industry and create something that's unique to the industry and something that's different and compelling, or things that give you, I suppose, reasons to go back. So having a menu diversity, I think, kind of helps. So with the Rottnest Lodge, we decided to go quite high-end with some pasta and seafood, but then you can also go there and have a cheeseburger. So it's kind of accommodating for all customers because there's not as much density in WA, so you actually have to do something that's a bit unique.
Sorry, I'm going to ask Graeme a question. Is
Sure.
that right?
Yeah.
Staff. How do you retain great staff?
Good question. So my previous role, I was at Lion, and I had my team was just over 1,000 people. So you're lucky enough at that level, I suppose, to look at all the different ways that incentivise and look after people. Rottnest Lodge is very unique. So we have 140 staff over there. 80 of them live on the island, and the rest of them commute. So on the island itself, we've been focusing on things beyond alcohol. So things that give the guys activities that isn't just drinking. So sports activities, competition. I went to a tarot and tea reading last week, which was pretty fun. I also painted a quokka, not an actual quokka, painted a picture of a quokka. So things, I suppose, that create a level of teamwork, I suppose, is really interesting. And obviously remuneration is a part of it. We also provide 2 meals a day over on the island, so that's kind of unique and different. And we look at what our competitors are doing, so we always try and do better than what they're offering, of course. So yeah.
Can I just jump in on this one as well? Just because it is something that I'm really passionate about is just building good staff and good culture. Ultimately Found was kind of called Found for the reason that I've worked for a lot of breweries which have gone all the way through to sell it to a multinational in WA, and for me, almost the moment that happens, you very much lose the staff culture that you've built over years, and it's almost soul destroying in some aspects. So for us, I actually used as part of our first capital raise, our people and culture page was the third page within our document. And it also, for me, was like a census on a no dickhead rule. So if there was a lot of higher end businessmen that really didn't understand why people and culture was at this point, and if they didn't agree with that, moved on. For me, like, we don't lose people. Everybody thinks, like, you know, the first question most people would ask me is like, oh, you must have a real hard time with staff. That's not the case whatsoever. You know, we're going on 3 years in Byford this weekend. Our head chef is still our head chef. Our 6 other team members in the kitchen are still there. The dude that started as our yardie is now our GM. And like, you know, going back to understanding numbers, and, you know, it's all about the transparency within our business that provides and empowers our people to do the best they can do. And I think that's really important. You know, hospo's hospo, but it's also a life for a lot of people. And, you know, there is a lot of mental health. There's a lot of other, you know, issues that happen within the place. So it's about creating a space that's safe, high performing, motivating, and, you know, at the end of the day, if you can create a safe space that also provide those things, you're going to create an awesome staff culture. You're going to create a culture where the dishwasher's thinking about the dishwashing liquid and saving 30 cents a week. And, you know, that's where it comes down to, you know, at the end of the day, empowering people to make those decisions. You know, it says a lot. So, yeah.
A couple of quick-fire questions. So I'll pass the mic down the row. Maybe 2 or 3 key decisions that can make or break a venue before it actually sort of opens. You want to start, Mike? Want to pass it down?
We're probably going to say the same things. For our bigger venues at the moment, and for working with Patrick over here on another project, Patrick Prinoval, we're finding the early contractor engagement process, really helpful, because that is another, back to that previous question, is helping us realise what our costs and where the costs are lying very early on, and working with our builder to deliver them in a more efficient way. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that we're doing now, and we've had some great experience with David Zimmerman over here. We just delivered Bailey Hill, which is an amazing restoration of an old hospital site. It's a precinct project, multiple venues within one project. But we met every week religiously. Yeah, it was that process informed, and we travelled and we did a lot of research, but it took us 4 years to deliver that project, but without fail every week. So that continual engagement with our client, and their feedback coming direct to us, not in some other meeting that they had with someone else, with the project manager, and then we're getting third-hand information and they're getting third-hand information from us. That process, I think, is critical to creating a unique space, but also a highly efficient space. So meeting with the team that delivers out there now on site, you know, that's I think a great tool.
For me, it's still going to be along the same sort of lines in a way. You know, it is actually working and building a good relationship with your architect, your builder, and almost more important than that is probably bringing the council along for the ride from day one. So, like, you know, you've got your plans, you've got an idea of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. For me, like, bringing the council, getting them involved early in the build, in the project, getting some ownership from the council or the workers within the council in your project, that was the most invaluable. That, like, you know, ultimately there's little things that can happen within sign-offs of kitchens and breweries and, you know, other things like the full pleather. But, you know, a good health and safety guy that's been along for the whole ride is quite likely to sign something off in knowing, hey, Steve, I'll be back in a month, make sure that's fine. So, yeah, for me, that's that. It's just that engagement with, you know, your key partners to get you there.
I guess one thing we do look at is what does the customer want? So we spend a lot of time, and this mainly around retail, is we'll get a lot of demographic data, work with guys like Quantium, look at credit card data, and know that our catchments are actually a lot smaller than we think they are. So we will look through our shopping centres or assets and say, hey, what is the spend in this area? What's the powerful? What is actually these stop gaps? And we've generally found once we've understood what the customers want and delivered that for them, we actually find they engage. And then we've got to partner with really good, Graeme's and Steve's, and who understand what they need to deliver. And that's probably the biggest thing is really it's not ever about us. No, we're just only a conduit to create that income stream. And that's if you engage with the customer and you deliver what they want, they feel safe in the environment, they want to be there, and you actually give them what they want, you're able to get revenue out of them. And I guess that's really what we fundamentally sit at the top end and say, what does the customer want, and how do we actually understand what they need and missing?
I love how we all think that research is eating and drinking. It's a really important part of our job.
Well, it's an
good
important tax write-off.
Yeah, good to hear that you did that well, Benno. So 3 things throughout tram lines. So we create what the concept, the vision is, and that's really important for us so that we know what we're doing, but then ultimately what that means is that everyone involved in the project knows, and that you as a consumer might not know all the differences, but the clarity of that when it comes through design and experience is really important. I think that's probably the most fundamental one for us.
On the way back, last question.
Yeah.
Most exciting opportunity in WA that your hospitality side of things that you're seeing right now?
I think WA people are very lifestyle people. So if we can be by the beach, or we can have something that isn't too stuffy into an experience, we actually quite like a shoulders down experience, I find. So things that help us relax and hopefully escape the day-to-day stresses that we're all going through, or pressure of life. I think it's quite nice if hospitality can create a full escape, that's really exciting.
Probably a little bit biased here, but this place is probably one of the hottest things I could imagine after we built this. But this is an amazing venue in that, this was an old police station for basically 120 years. Unless you're involved in the justice system, either being the judge, arresting someone, or being charged, you actually didn't come in here. So it really took guys like Pat. I promise you, when you walk through and saw a prison and the drunk tank, and Pat said, I can make this into a hotel, I must admit that was slightly visionary, and I thought I'd lean in on that. Pat, good on you. You would have signed a lease for this. But yeah, it really is. These are really rewarding projects. I promise you, building a Coles out in the suburbs is pretty vanilla, or a service station, or another fast food outlet. But getting involved in something that really, for 150 years, no one in West Australia had an opportunity to be in here, and we've reopened up to the public. It's awesome. It's really good fun, and it's great to partner with great people.
And yeah, for me, WA's home. WA's everything. We always buck the trend of whatever is going on around the world, whatever is going on nationally. I think there's huge opportunity still here in WA, and I think just to kind of quantify that, talking about the fact that spend is down. It's harder to keep people. In both of my venues in the last week, they've been pretty much the 2 biggest weeks we've ever had. And that's bigger than opening week in Subiaco with all the corporate spend. I think creating that space that people identify with, want to come visit, it's still there. That for those that don't just look at, of course, you can cut costs from a front of house perspective, or in the kitchen. I think those that are probably doing it and doing it well are probably figuring out how to, and this is going to be controversial, but how to probably save costs in accounting and bookkeeping and finance and legal and insurance dealing with insurance brokers through using AI, and that allows a service level to be that front of house, that experience, something that can never be recreated by this surge in new software. So for me, I still see, gone off on a tangent there, but I just see huge opportunity in WA. I think it's exciting, and I think even as a brewer, it's probably the biggest opportunity that I've seen in a market I've seen since working in beer for 20 years. So,
Awesome.
I'm going to be quick because I agree, heritage buildings. Finally, in the last 20, 30 years, Western Australia has started to respect our heritage buildings. Rather than knocking this building down, it's been converted into this, which, walking through here, we were not involved in this project, but walking through here, the experience that opens it up and engaging, you go to the toilets and you walk through an old concrete wall that was part of this, I think was quite a beautiful building. Others may disagree. Bailey Hill that we delivered had been sitting derelict for 30, 40 years. So we've got these heritage buildings and now we're finding our developers and clients and hospitality people who want to be in these spaces. And that is part of the unique experience that they're delivering. And so for me, that is our biggest opportunity in Western Australia.
Well, thank you very much, guys, appreciate all your insights. We will let everyone enjoy a drink in the venue and make sure you get those photos in because you could win a voucher and be here to experience it on another night. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night.